When Don Johnson entered Jimmy Kimmel's studio in June 2025, no one knew who he was. The legendary Miami Vice star, 75, appeared decades younger. He had an impossible tight jawline. He had perfect skin. Fans were astounded by what they saw. Experts in plastic surgery began examining his face right away. They saw evidence of costly work that was out of reach for the majority of people. Johnson, meanwhile, has never made any admissions. He is not disclosing his secrets. People are referring to him as unrecognizable because of how drastically he has changed. How had he damaged his face? On December 15, 1949, Don Johnson was born in the modest home of his grandmother, in the sleepy community of Flat Creek, Missouri. When he was born, his father, Freddie, was only 19 years old, and his mother, Nell, was only 16. As children themselves, they were attempting to establish a life without much financial assistance or support. Don was not raised with the kind of supervision or security that most kids require, because they were so young. His early years were spent more surviving than truly living. His mother was still in her early 30s when Don was a teenager. Their distance from one another was less that of parent and kid, and more that of siblings. And there were issues associated with that odd intimacy. There was a lot of tension and bustle at home, but not much structure. The family relocated to Wichita, Kansas, when Don was 6 years old in 1955, with the hopes of a better future. Although his father's employment with Boeing Aircraft seemed like a positive move, their difficulties persisted. The Johnson family remained impoverished, despite having a reliable employment. They shared a single bathroom in a modest home, designed for corporate employees. Squeezing into such small space were Don, his parents, and his 3 younger brothers. They were constantly worried about finances, and afraid that something may go wrong. He then said that having such a difficult upbringing had made a lasting impression on him. His dread of losing everything persisted, even after he rose to fame. Poverty wasn't limited to money. It influenced his views on hard work, safety, and what success meant. At the age of 12, Don experienced one of the most upsetting events of his early life. He lost his virginity to his 16-year-old babysitter at that point. He didn't make a healthy decision about it. It took place as everything in the house was collapsing. His parents were divorcing and fought all the time. Nobody was actually keeping an eye on the children. Something like this was made possible by the total lack of care and oversight. Don later discussed it in interviews, demonstrating the extent to which it impacted him. His house was more than simply a mess. It was aggressive. Don's father was extremely irascible. He frequently beat Don and his siblings. You never knew what would set off an eruption in the house, which was a place of terror. Beyond the beatings, Don would subsequently characterize his early years as extremely abusive. Even with your family present, it had the sensation of being totally alone in your own house. After the divorce, his mother made an effort to raise him, but she was unable to manage him. He ended up in juvenile court because of his severe outbursts by the age of 13. Despite the fact that his father was the one who had harmed him, the judge determined that he would be better off with him. That choice demonstrates how terrible the situation had gotten. Little things happened even in the midst of all the gloom, shaping Don in unexpected ways. His mother was a doctor, and her beauty parlor turned into an odd sort of school. Don observed how people spoke, how they held themselves, and how people's appearances may affect how they were treated when she was seated in that store. He carried these lessons on appearance and style with him. Later, when he needed to change his identity on television, they assisted him. When everything else was failing, the salon seemed to be the only area in his life where people were making an effort to look their best. Don's life altered in 1967 due to an incident. He had fallen asleep in business class and was expelled from the football team. He enrolled in an uninteresting drama class to make up the credits. However, he felt a surge of energy as he took the stage, as Tony in West Side Story. The audience offered him something he never had at home, and for the first time, the craziness of his life subsided. Recognition and acceptance. His teacher encouraged him to try out for a University of Kansas summer theatrical program after noticing something in him. His half scholarship eventually became a full scholarship. He had something to aim toward after that one time on stage. It turned into his escape route. He had already served time in juvenile court by the time he was 13. His mother had stopped attempting to manage him. He was ordered by the court to return to Missouri and live with his father. However, an unforeseen event occurred. He began learning how to hunt and fish from his father, who had previously beaten him. Don felt enchanted by these peaceful outdoor times spent far from anything else. They provided him with a feeling of direction and organization. He had to work to support the family at the same time. He worked as a shoe salesman and an apprentice butcher during his last year in Wichita, all the while attending school. He developed a strong work ethic as a result of that demanding workload, which helped him weather the harsh ups and downs of Hollywood. He studied acting at the University of Kansas on a full scholarship following his high school production. At the age of 18, he was prepared to pursue a greater goal than what life had offered him thus far. However, it was short-lived. In his first year, he began dating a 29-year-old acting instructor, and by his second year, he had completely left school. He was admitted into the American Conservatory Theater after relocating to San Francisco. He had only a dream and desperation, no money, and no backup plan at the age of 19. That was the last time he broke with his history. He had the opportunity to transform all of his childhood suffering into a performance in San Francisco. At the age of 20, Don appeared in Fortune and Men's Eyes, an off-Broadway production, at the Coronet Theater in Los Angeles in 1969. Don portrayed a character involved in a brutal jail sexual assault scene that stunned audiences. Salmo both acted in and directed the production. Some commentators referred to the performance as frightening since it was so unvarnished and contentious. Although it didn't make Don famous, it did draw attention to him. An advocacy group for ex-offenders was even founded as a result of the play's social message. Don made his cinematic debut in The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart the next year, in 1970. He portrayed a college dropout who enters New York's underground sex and drug culture as an adult film producer. Andy Warhol saw something special in Don's spirit and helped cast him. Despite its failure, the movie demonstrated Don's willingness to go to great lengths for a part. He was already taking all the risks at the age of 20. He starred in Zachariah, one of the most bizarre movies of the year, in 1971. Live bands performed in fantastical scenarios in this psychedelic Western rock musical. Don's hair was bleach blonde, and at one point, he even rolled around in horse poo. Despite the film's severe failure, he persisted. The Herod Experiment, a 1973 movie about sexual liberation on a college campus, featured him completely nude. He was 23 at the time, and Melanie Griffith, who would eventually become his wife, was 15 at the time of the movie. Although the movie was profitable, it did little to advance his career. He took what he could, though. Last but not least, he portrayed a teenage survivor who communicates telepathically with his dog in the odd yet impactful post-apocalyptic movie, A Boy and His Dog in 1975. Despite being violent and unsettling, it attracted attention. Don received a Golden Scroll Award for Outstanding Actor, and the movie took home a Hugo Award in 1976. This was the first time he was taken seriously after years of hardship. After a lifetime of suffering, his innate skill had finally found its niche. Don Johnson's life took a radical turn in 1984, when he was chosen to play Miami Vice's Detective Sonny Crockett. He had to bleach his naturally black hair blonde to fit the part, and the procedure was so harsh that it caused severe scalp pain. The budget for the show's costumes skyrocketed. Every season, Johnson donned Versace and Armani suits that cost more than $50,000, along with pastel t-shirts. A minor mishap during a fitting became a phenomenon. The producer loved the look so much that it became a style, and he forgot his socks. Sales of pastel suits tripled, and Ray-Ban's Wayfarer sunglasses increased by 2,000% in just 6 months after the event began. During the 1980s, this all culminated in a fashion revolution worth billions of dollars. And it all began with the way Don Johnson looked. The first episode, which debuted on September 16, 1984, revolutionized television programming. Compared to other police dramas at the time, the $1.3 million budget was significantly larger. Most shows only used about a dozen different camera angles, but the opening scene alone used 47. The director even rented specialized equipment that cost $200,000 and employed new shooting methods including steady cams. It was more than just background music. Real tracks by singers like Glenn Frey and Phil Collins cost them $10,000 a week. 3 separate Ferrari Daytonas were used for the chase scenes in that first episode, and there were 14 clothing changes specifically for Johnson. Over 15 million people watched it when it aired, making it the largest 1984 NBC premiere. When an episode titled Evan altered the public's perception of Johnson, in 1985, the show reached yet another peak. His character recalled the heartbreaking day he lost his colleague in a drug bust. Johnson took inspiration from his own suffering after losing his father when he was 12. Additionally, he broke down on camera 8 times in a row during filming. The cost of producing that episode alone was $1.8 million, and it featured a 12-minute black-and-white flashback. In a single week, 847 letters complimenting his acting were sent to NBC by fans who were so touched. He won a Golden Globe for the performance in 1986. He spoke for just 37 seconds as he took the stage to claim the trophy. However, his tearful thank you to his late father went down as one of the year's most watched TV moments. The program developed a close relationship with authentic Miami culture in 1986. The city's economy benefited by more than $4 million annually as a result of their filming in 23 distinct districts. In addition to paying real drug enforcement officials for guidance and hiring local actors, they also spent $3,000 a day filming scenes in actual drug zones that were well guarded by police. Johnson even picked up a little Spanish, which he employed in the sequences. The show attracted 30 million weekly viewers at its height. Visitors began traveling to Miami specifically to see the locations featured in the episodes, generating about $90 million in tourism revenue. However, things weren't always easy behind the scenes. Don Johnson and his co-star, Philip Michael Thomas, got into a heated argument in 1987. Thomas discovered that he was only receiving $25,000 per episode, while Johnson was receiving $75,000. For 3 days straight, Thomas refused to film with Johnson. In an episode titled Love at First Sight, NBC had to spend $450,000 in delay production because they had to fly in top executives for urgent meetings. Thomas insisted on having his name appear first in the credits and sought equal remuneration. In the end, he received a revolving credit order and a rise to $50,000. However, the harm had already been done. Many of their encounters were filmed separately and then edited together in succeeding seasons, since the tension remained so high. Something unexpected occurred in 1986. Don Johnson rose to fame as a musician. His debut album, Heartbeat, was released on September 30th. He didn't write the title song, but he wrote it himself, and it peaked at number 5 on the Billboard charts. The record received a gold certification in less than a month. Stars like Willie Nelson and Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones were among them. One of the most successful actor-to-singer transitions in entertainment history began as a side endeavor. In 1988, 2 years later, Johnson's acting once again took everyone by surprise. The character he portrayed in the silent movie Sweetheart's Dance was going through a midlife crisis. Critics were taken aback by his co-starring role with Susan Sarandon. It was the best thing Johnson had ever done, according to Roger Ebert. It was dubbed his breakthrough by the Washington Post. Despite being praised by reviewers, the movie was a failure, earning only $3 million in a $9 million budget. Nevertheless, it demonstrated Johnson's ability to play important parts. Johnson took a far more controversial tack in 1990. Dennis Hopper directed the sultry thriller, The Hot Spot, in which he appeared. The picture pushed the limits of popular filmmaking with its sensual scenes, dark music, and tension. It was compared to Twin Peaks by critics. Despite its poor box office performance, it became a cult favorite and demonstrated Johnson's willingness to take chances. Johnson wanted to do more than just act, even in Miami Vice. He co-directed the 2-part Golden Triangle episode in January 1985. His character claimed to be from Wichita, exactly like Johnson had been in real life, and there were personal details like crime activities connected to Thailand. These episodes alluded to his future work as a producer and demonstrated his increasing power behind the scenes. Work wasn't the only factor in Johnson's 1986 Golden Globe victory. He gave a heartfelt thank you to his then partner, Melanie Griffith, on stage. The media was always focusing on their connection. He revealed a more vulnerable side of himself to his supporters by connecting his award speech to their love story. In front of millions, it was the turning point in his career and personal lives. Johnson had already made some rash personal decisions even before Miami Vice. He married a dancer whose name has never been made public in 1968, when he was only 18. That marriage was dissolved after just 2 months. He then wed a different woman in 1973, whom he subsequently derisively referred to as a wealthy bimbo. And within a few days, that marriage was over. His chaotic and erratic love life, for which he would become famous, was hinted at by his early romances. However, the most unsettling tale began in 1972. Melanie Griffith, then 14 years old, started dating Johnson, who was 22 at the time. In some way, Tippi Hedren, her mother, permitted this to occur. At the age of 15, Griffith moved in with them. On her 18th birthday in January 1976, they were married, but the marriage ended after 6 months. In hindsight, Hollywood at the time disregarded the bond. It would be viewed as quite improper and exploitative nowadays, however. There was more to their tumultuous tale. They remarried in 1989, and on October 4, 1989, Melanie fell pregnant with their daughter, Dakota Johnson. Only a few months after Johnson's breakup with Barbara Streisand, the wedding took place in June. Their second marriage, which ended in 1996, was characterized by erratic behavior. Johnson openly cheated, drank excessively, and took narcotics including cocaine and quaaludes. He hosted extravagant parties that included politicians, criminals, and models. Griffith eventually left him for Antonio Banderas, because he could no longer stand him. Johnson lived with Patty D'Arbanville from 1981 to 1985, in between these two marriages. On December 7, 1982, their son, Jesse Wayne Johnson, was born. However, as Miami Vice became popularity, everything was different. Patty was left to raise their son by herself, while Johnson spent months at a time filming in Miami. Their romance ended when she finally understood that fame had changed him too much. Following all of the confusion, Johnson made an attempt at something new. He wed Kelly Flegger, a San Francisco-based Montessori teacher, on April 29, 1999. The mayor of the city officiated the wedding, which was held at millionaire Gordon Getty's house and featured Robert Wagner as best man. Together, they gave birth to 3 children: Deacon in April 2006, Jasper in June 2002, and Athetherton Grace in December 1999. Johnson finally appeared prepared for a solid existence at the age of 49. Kelly prevented him from reverting to his previous behavior. Their marriage has lasted more than 25 years, which many said was unthinkable for a man who used to burn everything he touched. Thanks to the structure she gave him, Don Johnson was entangled in a situation in 2002 that sounded more like a Hollywood screenplay than actual events. Everyone was shocked by what the Border Patrol discovered when they stopped him on the German-Swiss border. His suitcase included documents connected to dubious financial transactions, totaling $8 billion. Johnson claimed that he was just in Europe in an attempt to raise money for a film. He maintained that the materials, which were connected to a movie, were authentic. Ultimately, no criminal charges were brought against him. However, that was irrelevant. The film industry doesn't wait for a judicial decision. The producers were put off by the headlines alone. Studios that had previously lined up to cooperate with him abruptly stopped doing so once his name was tarnished by scandal overnight. The fact that he was innocent was irrelevant. It would take years to repair the damage to his reputation. However, Johnson had one lifeline from 1996 to 2001 prior to that crisis. Nash Bridges was the name of the show. For Johnson, it was everything, even though it appeared to be simply another police drama on paper. He created it, starred in it, and even received a portion of the earnings. He portrayed San Francisco detective, Inspector Nash Bridges, who cruised about in a bright yellow 1971 Plymouth Barracuda. The 6-season series provided him with a reliable source of income when he most needed it. He received $19 million in a 2013 settlement after suing Risher Entertainment for unpaid revenues years later. When he needed it most, that lawsuit came to his rescue. His financial difficulties persisted even after Nash Bridges helped him stay afloat. The City National Bank of Los Angeles claimed in 2003 that he owed them over $1 million in addition to legal fees. Johnson filed for bankruptcy in July 2004. The focal point of it all was his cherished Woody Creek Ranch, which he had purchased from well-known socialite Terry Butcher in 1987. That ranch, which he cherished, was about to go up for auction. The press had a great time. It was referred to as a riches to rags incident. Once earning tens of millions, the man was now fighting to keep his house. Johnson saved the ranch at the last minute by making an unidentified payment. How he managed it is a mystery to everyone. Some said that he sold jewelry, artwork, or even one of his vintage vehicles. However, the harm had already been done. The world was aware that Don Johnson was more than just a lost celebrity. He had no money. The fact that his film jobs weren't sufficient to fill in the gaps didn't help either. He co-starred with Kevin Costner in Tin Cup, 1996, as a cocky, well-dressed golfer. Globally, the film earned over $75 million. But the avalanche of bills he was facing was too big for even that. He possessed an excessive number of residences, vehicles, ex-wives, and bills. He was acting as though the 1980s were still in the past. However, the salaries have decreased from their previous levels. Regardless of Tin Cup's success, years of overspending would not be resolved. He had attempted to achieve success in music throughout that same decade. His 1986 single, Heartbeat, went rather well, but his 1989 album was a complete bust. The only nations where it appeared on charts were Germany and Switzerland, and it hardly received any radio play. Tours and production were costing him more than he was earning. He left music behind after learning a difficult lesson. Singing a love duet with Barbra Streisand in 1988, he did accomplish a minor hit, but it too felt more like a passing fad than a genuine comeback. He shocked everyone once again years later. He played Sheriff Earl McGraw in the 2014 television version of From Dusk Till Dawn. Michael Parks had always portrayed that character, therefore this was significant. Fans were intrigued by Johnson's surprise takeover. His character's untimely death early on served as the plot's catalyst for the 3 seasons of the show, which aired until 2016. The show was promoted as a Netflix original outside of the US, which provided Johnson with a new level of exposure. It was dark, nasty, and a mix of lawmen and vampires, and Johnson was perfectly at home. However, his most notable return was in 2019, when he became a member of the renowned Knives Out cast. In A Household Full of Secrets, he portrayed Richard Deadale, the arrogant and distrustful son-in-law. The movie made nearly $312 million worldwide, and it was a box office smash. In addition to being a member of the cast, Johnson received recognition for his performance. He was distinctive. He returned with the release of Glass Onion, the sequel. He was suddenly a member of one of the most talked-about film franchises in the decade, after years of being viewed as a warning story. He portrayed Arthur in the 2022 follow-up to the 2018 movie, Book Club, The Next Chapter. The narrative took place in Italy this time. They shot in Rome, Venice, and even Tuscany. Johnson's character was content, serene, and enamored with Vivian, played by Jane Fonda. It revealed a more vulnerable side of him. Viewers adored the film, which provided him an opportunity to shine in a lighthearted romance. In May 2023, the movie debuted in theaters, and the following month, Peacock began streaming it. Then came Rebel Ridge, which debuted in September 2024 on Netflix. Johnson, a dishonest police chief in a small town, was the villain this time. The movie was well received, and even took home the Critics' Choice Award for Best Television Film. Johnson stole the show, according to reviewers. The role was the complete opposite of his previous Miami Vice persona, dark and vicious. But it worked because of that. People were noticing that he was changing. In addition to receiving numerous nominations, Netflix introduced him to millions of viewers worldwide. He moved into a totally different role in the fall of 2024. Johnson portrayed Captain Robert Massey on ABC's Dr. Odyssey, the dignified captain of a cruise ship, who handled everything from rowdy passengers to exciting maritime adventures. The show featured episodes with hallucinogenic taffy and orca encounters, as well as medical drama and ocean storms. He was the show's emotional fulcrum due to his composed and authoritative demeanor. It was broadcast on Hulu, and ABC. Johnson was at the center of something significant once more. However, in June 2025, people began to notice something strange. Johnson, who is currently 75, appeared younger than anyone anticipated. Too young. When he showed up on Jimmy Kimmel Live, with a jawline that felt a bit too tight, rumors of plastic surgery erupted. Experts offered their opinions. According to a Florida surgeon, he appeared to have had a facelift that only addressed his mid and lower face, leaving his neck unaltered. According to a different London doctor, it might just be excellent skincare and modest fillers. Some even asserted that nothing had been done for him. In any case, supporters were taken aback. Such work may easily cost $50,000 or more, but Johnson never provided any confirmation. Social media exploded. Trending videos used the phrase "Don Johnson is now 75, but look at him after losing all his money." Debating what was real and what wasn't, people exchanged before and after pictures. Incessant comparisons were made to his Instagram photos with his wife, Kelly, whom he had married 26 years prior. He looked amazing, according to some. He was unrecognizable, according to others. However, one thing was evident. People were still talking about Don Johnson.